covering it. It's a summit that's going to take place for the next 4 days.
Thank you, America First! Thank you, Stop the Steal!
With my sister Elizabeth Etchinson, we are at the turning point.
Shlama, shalom, and salam to one and all. Thank you so much for tuning into the Monique Show. I'm your host, Monique Oshana. We're coming to you live on this Facebook page, of course, the Monique Show English, not the Assyrian version, as you well know, that we have two versions of this program. One is in the Assyrian language, one is in the English language. And today we're coming to you live with two very honored guests one we've had already is a friend to the program, Lieutenant Colonel Sergei Sengari, and we have a new guest, new brother that is with us today that we will introduce in a few minutes. And we are excited to be with you. And for those of you that have been following us and tuning in every week, thank you so much for coming back. And for those of you that are here for the first time, thank you once again, and we hope you enjoy the program. Today, it's all things elections. Of course, we are a few days, I think we're about 12 days away from the midterm election on November the 8th. We wanted to bring you all of the facts. And of course, one of the major things that our message is to the Assyrian Americans, to mobilize them and to have a role in the United States election. And we're going to go into a deep discussion on what it means to an Assyrian American, of course, for all of us as Americans to be able to have the privilege and the honor to be able to vote. And so before we do that, as many of you have, we've been announcing on the program, of course, the Monique Show is celebrating 7 years of broadcasting, 3 years in radio. We started in 2015, 3 years in radio, and the last few years have been on social media. And we are so thankful and we are so blessed to have you among us and following us and sharing. And I'm going to ask you today, if you can, please share this program because it is very beneficial to everyone that listens to it, not only the Assyrian Americans, of course. The message is wide. The message is for all Americans as we reach this midpoint election and the importance and how important it is for us to get involved, take a role, take our role as we the people and do our duty to govern ourselves, to take this opportunity to raise our voices and to choose how we will be governed. Now, I know that, of course, every week that we bring you this program, it is brought to you by the none other talented engineering of Mr. Fred Duman of Cinnamon Production. We are so blessed again that we have him in our life because without him, we could not be producing this program. And I know that, Fred, we have 3 new videos, and I think one of them is from last week that we could not play, of Ms. Shushan Sergis. And then we have none other than Dr. Ron Susak. And then, of course, another well-wisher is with us today on the program, Lieutenant Colonel Sengari, Sergei Sengari, that we will be talking to later. So we want to play for you these 3 videos of congratulating us on the 7th year anniversary of our program. Go ahead.
Hi, I just wanted to say happy anniversary, Monique Show. You have done a great work for 7 years, and I believe you're going to keep and continue doing it better and better. بركات مريا هاوي أمك بكل خط السلطة وبطلب قاتخ من تيتا. Thank you, Shushan Service.
I consider it a great honor to commend Mona Oshana for 7 years of telecasting. What a thrill and honor it is. And Mona, you are among the leaders. Your voice is so strong. Your determination is so intense in order to honor the Bible, to honor Jesus Christ, and to work with the Assyrian nation, and to see that nation eventually restored as a nation to fulfill its divine purpose as revealed through Isaiah, to be serving under the Messiah along with Israel and Egypt. What a glorious time that's going to be. I want to thank you and commend you for being so strong in your faith and in your convictions and the blessing you have brought to Assyrians worldwide. God bless you and thank you for the privilege of your friendship.
Mona, congratulations on 7 outstanding years of programming with the Mona K Show. Your show truly, as you look at the archives, has told the stories of the struggles of the persecuted Assyrians across the globe. As a role model, also more importantly, as an Assyrian woman everywhere, you have shown us how to manage a household, husband and kids with kindness, while at the same time, you have always kept the love of your nation front and center in your daily work. America, Assyria, and the rest of the world do need strong Assyrian women who lift and build others, at the same time live bravely, and also carry the indomitable will to win. You are a great representative for the Assyrian nation and an ambassador, true ambassador of the daughters of the Assyrian Queen Shamiran. May God bless you and keep you in his light, especially as you grow your Mona K Show into the future. God bless.
Thank you so much. I am humbled, Rabbi Sargis, that you are with us today for your kind words, and we will speak more of it about it later during the program. But right now, we want to move forward to the monologue for today. And of course, as we mentioned, it's all things election today. We're 12 days away, and we want to go ahead and remind everyone the importance of the election. Now, the midterm is upon us. In a few days, the balance of power will be decided by we, the people, as we use our voice to make a choice by voting on the direction or path our country will be heading. This is a privilege that we must never ask. We never take for granted, no matter how disappointed or frustrated we get with the outcome. When you do a global research on the process and policies of other countries and other people's elections, other countries' election, maybe then America will appreciate and realize what a wonderful system of election and democracy that we have. I remember a few years ago during the coverage of one of the most chaotic Iraqi elections, and we've covered them all, and we were the ones as expatriates who voted during that election, raising our finger that we had stuck in that box of or that bottle of ink to make sure that people knew that we voted, and we held up our finger with pride, saying for the first time, even though we're expatriates, we were able to elect, that we were able to vote. We saw how excited people were to go out and finally have a chance to raise their voice to vote for the first time in many cases in their lives. And it was so beautiful to watch people, including older women, senior citizens that didn't know how to read and write, get in line and to try and to vote. I want to mention a incident that was when there was a line forming in front of a poll center, and a suicide bomber had actually gotten into the line. Obviously, nobody knew about that, and he was actually not there to vote, which, of course, that was obvious. That incident where the suicide bomber was also in the line, he ended up blowing himself up, and he killed many people that were around him, including a police officer that obviously was there to secure the election site. Unfortunately, as I said, many people died. But here's the phenomenon that happened that day. When the line was finally cleared And when the line was secured once again, the most amazing thing happened. Those people that were in that line, who could have very well have died, the survivors in the line, got right back into the line once the area was secured, and they went on to vote. This is their message to say, we will not allow a suicide bomber to stop us, because their resiliency was on display here, to say that we will not be hindered, we will not stop, we will vote. How much more you and I, that are living in one of the most privileged countries in the world, to be able to have that honor, have that liberty, to be able to vote. See, if we want to control our elections, and we talk about controlling, we talk about the outcome of the elections. If we want to control our election, we must get involved. We cannot just keep complaining. We must get involved and be aware of the issues and never give up. Never give up, as the Iraqis never gave up. Until today, they are still voting, even though they still have a chaotic government as we speak. For those who are still upset about the last election, I say the following: even if our candidate of choice had won a second term, as the case always is, and we know this process, he or she would have been out of office after the second term. Then what? We need to go back and think, if President Trump had won, and this is to those that voted for President Trump and were upset that he did not win. President Trump, the most that he could have served in office would have been 2 terms. What would have happened then? Would we have remained angry? Would we have gotten angry and remained angry? Do we stop being involved? Do we stop being part of the solution? We must understand we are fortunate enough to get an opportunity to be part of history by merely voting. But it is in the in-between times that we must rise up for the most important aspect of voting. We, the people, must fill the gap as patriots, the in-between times, that will not, and we will not give up our democracy, and we will not give up our protection of the rule of law and our way of life. We can't be compared. Who can be compared with Abraham Lincoln, or George Washington, or even as recent as Ronald Reagan? And of course, on the Democratic side, everybody says, I'm a John F. Kennedy Democrat. Who can compare with those great men? The in-between means that we, the people, in between these gaps, we ask ourselves, when those great men were living, what did we do? When those great men passed on, what did we do as the people? This is my point today. We, the people, will never lose our position or our inalienable rights given by God to govern, and we are protected by the Constitution of the United States of America. Inalienable right refers to the rights that cannot be surrendered, sold, or transferred to someone else. We own those rights. Now, we, the people, own the right to govern. We will never be voted out of office as the elected officials that we voted, and we will come and go. The elected officials will come and go, but we will never come and go. We must rise up, educate ourselves, and make wise decisions for our respected generation. We must not depend on the elected officials that are there to serve our purpose. No one candidate will have all the answers. We, the people, as the collective power, must find a way to work with what we have for the best results. We must understand that we have the power, even when the candidate of our choice does not win. We must not become tolerant. We must not become angry, because through anger, we will compromise and we will slack off on our duties as we, the people. This is how we got here to begin with. Not because a Democrat or a Republican won, but because we, the people, resigned and compromised. We put ourselves in our country in this vulnerable position that we are now fighting an uphill battle. We, the people, must understand we choose how to be governed. We must understand the power that is within our reach. The great presidents in the past were not the answer. It was always and has been always God that has been the answer. And when a nation drew close to God, God brought about powerful men who heard his word and submitted to his will. But as we must all They that were here before us all have died and were buried. It is their legacy that we stand on today through the diligence of the generation that lived during and after, that passed on this inheritance, recognizing the powerful accomplishments and the values must continue to be built upon still today. We have a modern day awakening that we can honestly say was started by President Donald J. Trump. He became an American president that accomplished what needed to be accomplished during his time, his term. Trump became at a time when we needed him, and he accomplished his goal by refocusing on the needs of America. This is where the America First policy was reborn and recreated. Many of us that had been going about our business as usual were re-energized to fight for our liberties, ensuring we can exercise our rights as a free society. We realized we matter. We realized that we as Americans matter, and that it was okay to put the needs of America first. Losing his second bid for re-election does not render President Trump ineffective, as he continues to be a great political influencer in our society. A leader is only as strong as his base. Therefore, as much as we favor one candidate over another, we must also continue to do our duty as the true government of the United States of America to ensure our system of government is followed. Listen to me. We must ensure that it is followed beyond Donald Trump and beyond President Joe Biden. It must be followed beyond Donald Trump, and I should really say, despite President Joe Biden. We, the people, must rise up and build upon, or be able to be ready to do damage control, regardless of the previous president, as the founders who wrote the Constitution delegate us as we, the people, to protect our system of government. We have an obligation and a responsibility. We are not elected, we are appointed by God, first, protected by the Constitution, to remain in power forever. We elect individuals that we believe in them to speak on our behalf. We must also hold them accountable and not be afraid to speak up when they stop representing us. Because here's what the Declaration of Independence says: that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alert or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. End of quote. Don't wait for someone to tell you who to vote for. Make your own decision with knowledge, which is power. So how do we vote? The other day I heard a saying, and I'd like to repeat it here. We, the people, are lions, not sheep. We are leaders, not followers, as our Constitution starts with we the people, and as such we are. We the people, the lions, the leadership of this country, are not sheep and must never act as such. Let's get right to it. I'd like to introduce our returning guest on the program is one of my personal heroes, Lieutenant Colonel Cengiz Senghati, a retired U.S. Army colonel and CEO of the Near East Center for Strategic Engagement, LLC, and founder of the United Assyrian Appeal and former candidate for the 9th Congressional District of Illinois. Thank you, Robbie, for being here, and welcome to the program.
It's good to be here, Mona, and thank you for the kind words. Much appreciated. And again, congratulations on 7 years of the type of work you have done. It's not easy. It takes time. Show preps I know are difficult. I do it myself every Monday. So much appreciated. Thank you very much, and keep on moving forward.
And truly, I do mean that you are truly one of my heroes. Lieutenant Colonel Cengiz Senghati, a true Assyrian American patriot through and through. We are so privileged to have such a great Assyrian leader and someone we can all learn from. Patriotism, discipline, and love of nation. Thank you so much once again. And for the first time, I'm so honored to have on our program Mr. Donald, and I hope I don't butcher his last name, Babadelaire. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah.
Okay. Also, Near East Center for Strategic Engagement, Political, Cultural, and Religious Affairs Advisor. Welcome to the program, brothers. We are so happy to have you here and to learn so much from you.
Thank you
Thank
for
you
the
for
invite.
having us, and congrats on the 7-year anniversary of your show.
Thank you so much, Donald. I appreciate it. Now, the elections, as I said, is upon us, and we are watching. Of course, me being in Arizona, Donald, I know you aren't in California, and of course,
Hmm.
Illinois, Lieutenant Colonel Sengari. But we are also watching Pennsylvania, Georgia, and Nevada. Lieutenant Colonel Sengari, let me start with you. What's at stake here in this election?
Well, look, it depends. It's how you want to approach it. Truly at stake is the reality that you have a midterm and what the future of the current POTUS, President Biden's agenda is going to be. If the House becomes a Republican House and even the Senate possibly becomes a Republican Senate, then what happens is you pretty much now have checked the executive branch and what it might have decided or wanted to do over the next couple of years, uh, because Congress holds the purse strings. So, with that said, it's going to be up to the executive branch administration, and we call the 23 West execs that initially existed even under the Obama administration, or currently in the current administration at the executive levels, to be able to turn around and see if they want to compromise with a Congress that holds the purse strings. In this case, might be under the control of the Republicans. So, if you want money to be allocated for the type of programs you have, you will have to strike deals. Simply said, the United States is a two-party nation. One is called a Republican, and the other one is called Democrat. It is two means by which people can serve in Congress, and the Senate or the House, and those are two vehicles to be able to be at the table to make the decisions legislatively as to what the future of this country is going to be over the next decade. And if the House becomes a Republican House, if the Senate becomes a Republican, is a direct message from the American people to the current Democratic Party in charge that we are not happy with the policies that you tried to implement over the past couple of years, and that we are looking for a change. And it gives an ability for this, checks and balances system that was established by the forefathers of this nation to be able to check the executive branch moving forward.
Exactly. And I know that in Chicago, there was an Assyrian GOP, a candidate forum that happened last Sunday, the 23rd, in an effort to get out the vote. But before we talk about that, Colonel Singati, I want to get Donald in here and to get his view on this. Assyrian Americans, as legal immigrants, come from a past where we have stood against the greatest threats in the Middle East and survived as active members of a viable community as Assyrian Americans that stood the test of time from our past and coming forward, faced with all kinds of oppression and persecution, having survived the past oppression and persecution. We're here to serve the purpose through our survival to continue to stand against the injustice. What would you say to those that might, in fact, maybe from the last election, not just Assyrian Americans, but many Americans that have said, my vote will not matter? How do we mobilize Assyrian Americans and Americans in general so that they can go out there and encourage them to vote and not to sit at home and stomp really on the privilege that we have to be able to vote?
Yeah, Mona. I would say to that if you think your vote doesn't matter, you better make it matter. And what I want to do is go back to the story that you told at the beginning of your monologue, in which you discussed the terrorist that entered the voting line attempting to blow himself up. Now, from the perspective of us as Americans, we would say that that person is a terrorist, and by definition, we'd be right, because this person was using violence with the intent on changing the direction of politics in the country of Iraq, right? However, from his own perspective, he would feel like he was left with no choice. And when I say that, I want to segue into a tale in American politics, something that has been said by, I really don't know who this was come up with, but it's the story of the 4 cartridges, or 4 boxes. And the first box would be your jury box. So if you have any grievances, you take your case to court and you try to litigate it there. And you have a jury of individuals who sit inside of a box, a square area or rectangular, and they make a determination. And whether right or wrong, we abide by whatever they decide. And the other box, so to speak, would be the ballot box or the soapbox. And the ballot box obviously being voting, and the soapbox being where we voice our opinions or discuss matters of related to politics or our civic duty. And unfortunately, if we find that we are unable to resolve anything using those 3 boxes, doesn't matter which order they come in, well, unfortunately, we turn to the 4th box, which is the cartridge box. In other words, ammunition, violence. And that's what we really would love and should want to avoid at all costs possible. Because war is costly in terms of dollars. War is costly in terms of blood. It affects families, countries, destroys and tears apart people. And this is both fortunately and unfortunately, it's something that many Americans are unfamiliar with in this day and age, because they're so removed from the idea of war. The most recent one drew down several years ago the amount of individuals within the military who are in active combat positions has decreased compared to previous decades. So the amount of individuals who feel affected by what's going on, or at least that are aware of it, is very minuscule compared to before. Whereas you compare it with World War II, and everyone was affected by that. Entire nations were affected by that. We had massive population decrease during those years. So we would love to avoid that at all costs. And the only way to do it is to get involved. So those individuals who say, well, my vote doesn't matter, make it matter. And so there's a way that you can do that. Unfortunately, we feel, a lot of people feel like it doesn't matter. And that's not just individuals who are part of the Republican Party. There's individuals on the left who feel the same way. And I would say to those individuals, get involved in your local committees. And I cannot take credit for this strategy. This was the precinct committee strategy. I forget who the individual is that came up with it, but it's been pushed for the last 2 years. And basically it involves us individuals at the ground level, at the local level, going into our Republican central committees in various localities and fighting for positions within the party at the local level. And it's the party at the local level that essentially makes the decisions in the bigger picture. Now, the Republican Party, at least according to numbers that I had heard of just 2 years ago, has a total of about 300,000 precinct committee seats, and only 1/3 of those were occupied by people. And of those 100,000, let's say, many of them would be considered by many to be quote unquote rhinos. Whether they are or not is irrelevant. If you feel that way, you have 200,000 positions that you can fill. And if you fill all of those, you have now taken the party back from the people that you claim are steering it in the wrong direction.
Mhm.
So when you say your vote doesn't matter, guess who it is that's appointing people to positions within local government, within state government? Guess who it is that's deciding whether machines should be used or paper ballots? It's those individuals on the ground level. So I would say to our people and to all Americans in general, if you think your vote doesn't matter, you need to make it matter. And the only way to do that is to get involved at your local level. If you cannot do anything greater than that, that's fine. I believe you should first focus on your family. And if you think that you've got everything in your personal life squared away, then go ahead and get involved in a circle beyond that, which would be your local community. Don't try to venture out too far and solve problems that you're not capable of solving. You can do enough just there at the local committee precinct position. And so there is where you can make the changes. There is where you can win back your nation.
Absolutely. And you know what? Perfectly said. As a result of that, I was talking to Lieutenant Colonel Sanghari on the phone the other day, and he was asking, what position do you hold right now, Mona? And I let him know that there is a new coalition that I was asked to lead, which is here in Arizona. And I'm coming back to your answer, as you're saying, from the local level. It's called the Arizona Republican Legislative Victory Fund, which the motto is "Keep Arizona Red," which is making sure that our local legislators, of course, on the GOP side, remain in the House of Representatives and in the Senate of our local government. Because during the last election, if there was a lesson that we learned, it was on the local level that we did not know our powers, we did not know our abilities, we did not know our what we need to do and what we should have done. And this is why our coalition right now is called the Assyrian American Patriots Coalition. And we make sure that the legislators, and we make sure, and we actually rally votes for them and we speak to them. And of course, I've been wanting to have Chairman Jonathan Lyons, that's the chairman of our coalition, to be with us and to discuss how important it is right now to understand what's going on the local level. For example, one such council or one such department that we were not aware of, which is the city council, or where everything, all of the, and Lieutenant Colonel Sanghari will probably speak on that much more. The fact that he was running for office, he understands what the city council does and how important it is. And today we are hearing, get involved with the local government, get involved with your school system, get involved and get elected in your school boards. School boards. Today we are hearing things or departments that we had never heard because we were concentrating on the national level. Right now, we are understanding that in order for Arizona to become part of the greater United States of America, we must ensure that our voice and our choice is heard. So thank you for mentioning on the local level, because I think it's very important. And what is your viewpoint on that, Lieutenant Colonel Sanghari?
Oh, look, that's where it starts, right? Your span of influence. You as an individual go through the process of growing up, making decisions as to what you want to do, maybe with your future. So you educate yourself, you go to various different schoolings, you pick up a trade, you decide on a career. In my case, 20 years in the military, you learn your craft. In that process, as you grow, you decide to get married, have a family. You learn how to raise kids, how to uh, basically manage a family structure. And then, with all that said, after you go on through all that process, then you look at, okay, do I have the capacity, capability to help my neighbor or to help my immediate family, maybe my sisters, my mother, my father, and others. And then from there, do I have the abilities or capabilities of maybe helping my local community, maybe just in the neighborhood, and then expanding that to possibility of my local district, or as it grows, my state, and then as it grows, possibly the nation. Um, and that's it. That's pretty much a process by which you're able to move through as you grow and learn, which never stops, and hopefully the skill capabilities you have to try to apply them to helping your nation
Exactly.
in whatever capacity you can. It's simple. It's not that difficult. Look, I can only use this example. We all live in the ones who are lucky, we all live in a house that we own. Even if you're renting a house, regardless of how big that house is, what type of furniture it has, how many people live in it, there's one small thing that allows you to get in and out of that house, and it's called a key. And that one small key is what is required to be able to turn and walk in and out of that house, and is what secures it. Your vote, you yourself as an individual, are the key to saving your nation and which direction the nation goes, regardless of how big that nation is, what abilities it has. And if you do not vote in this case, which is a right that you have been given and you have earned, and others have died for you to have that right, going back to when this nation was established, then that is something that you're forfeiting. And if you're forfeiting that, that means you're forfeiting the ability of yourself to affect your future. Even if you say, I don't want to vote in this election because I don't like anybody from either this party or that party,
Hmm.
still go in and vote, because what we have learned is that corruption is sometimes endemic in some of the institutions that are out there that have been stagnated under one party or another. And what happens if you don't vote? Your vote will be taken. As I spoke in the Australian GOP event, I said, unfortunately, in the state of Illinois, dead people vote. And if dead people are going to vote, you, as a live individual, should go in and vote. If not, somebody's voting on your behalf anyway. So it might as well be you who is voting, and not allow somebody else to take that vote and use your name and create a fake vote for whoever they think is going to be more beneficial to them rather than to the country.
Not then you know what? You're absolutely correct. And speaking of the Assyrian GOP of Illinois, as I mentioned, you had a candidate forum on Sunday, the 23rd, and it was the effort to, of course, get out the vote. And I think we have a short clip from what you said that day. So let's go ahead and watch it.
Gotten a lot of our candidates out there. We got last minute calls saying, hey, we would like to be there, but we want to go ahead and, being the way the weather is, be able to get out there, knock on some more doors. I said, go ahead, because at the end of the day, those votes count. So we're not going to keep you here too long. We're going to get you to speak up here, and then as soon as you're done, you're welcome to leave. With that said, I will remind you all, and as I saw today on the TV, when you got President Obama being brought out to start campaigning for various different Democratic members of the Illinois coalitions that are running here in order to bring the vote out for the Democratic side. You do know that there's been some pressure now put on the Democratic machine for the first time in a long time. So with that said, thank you very much for all the candidates for what you're doing. I do have a timer up here. It's a 5-minute timer for our candidates to speak. When you come up, just follow the time. Once your queue is done, please, let's get others in the queue. I do know some individuals may not have been on the roster because we had so many candidates, but we get time at the end. We are going to give you an opportunity to come on up and speak. Much appreciated. With that said, we're going to begin with Kathy Salvi for the U.S. Senate.
It is phenomenal to be here. Thank you so much. I think you all want to know how we're going to make this path to victory for all Republicans, this little red wave to happen. And I can only tell you this. I have been going into many groups that are not typical, as many of you have, Republican voting groups, and they are hungry for our message and enthusiastic, whether it be, and I don't want to identify some of them, but I just came back from the south side of Chicago with a beautiful group of people at a meet and greet. And frankly, they just don't vote Republican there. But not only did our message resonating, my opponent, Tammy Duckworth, does not deserve re-election. You can't pretend to have a record when you haven't worked for the last 10 years to honor the fine people of greater Cook County in Chicago and And I love Chicago. I love Cook County. And the entire state of Illinois, the one thing I've heard from everywhere in every sector is, where has she been? What has she done? Well, we know that the ship is listing on its side. And what will bring it back a little bit and help Illinois, help Chicago, and help is by electing a Republican United States Senator. And that is me, Kathy Salvi. Thank you so much to the Assyrian GOP for having me here. And I'll tell you, when you go out and ask people, why should I vote for Salvi? This is what you tell them. Are you concerned about the economy, crime and safe streets, and parents? Parents who deserve to be in the front seat of their children's educational decisions. Any one of those decisions are reasons why to vote for me, Kathy Salvi. But moreover, Tammy Duckworth has failed us. How has she failed us? Well, when she endorsed Lori Lightfoot for mayor of the city of Chicago, she told her what she stands and how out of touch she is with what's happening here in Cook County. Lori Lightfoot stripped $52 million from the Chicago police budget. She has endorsed the Safety Act, and she's implemented it along with Kim Fox in the city of Chicago, and is making our streets unsafe, and every person who lives in Chicago, who lives in Greater Cook County, and who loves Chicago, those of us who travel from the collar counties and believe and love our great city, we're affected by it. And so one thing we can do is vote Tammy out of office. She wants to make the Safety Act federal law. This is a mistake. And one reason why I received the unanimous endorsement of the Fraternal Order of Police, which I'm proud of. And when I was at thank you. On Friday, when I was at the Bank the Blue benefit, which benefits soldiers who supporting mental health of our first responders, I was so proud to be there. I went table to table to over 1,000 tables, and many people who've never voted, and they don't vote Republican, are going to be voting for Kathy Salvi and many of the fine people down ballot. So that's just one of many reasons. But the principal reason, look at the economy. When we now were energy independent, and now we've become energy independent, and now the spending and the printing of trillions of dollars, those are two reasons why we need to restore our state to Republican leadership. And as I mentioned to this group on the South Side, we need balance. Your needs are not being heard by 2 U.S. senators in office. We need to get someone who's going to shake up the other side of the aisle for Washington, for Chicago, and for your communities here on the South Side. And they listen and they agree, which is why I believe that even in deep blue Chicago, Cook County, we're going to find a Republican elected U.S. senator and every single one of the fine candidates down ballot. So it's going to be up to all of you here to take our message out, and I'm so proud that I'm here with you today. But we are going to win this, and I knew when Tammy Duckworth went negative 2 weeks ago on the radio, on the television, and one fellow said, Kathy, I see every 10 ads to her, you're one. Well, people don't even realize that her negative ad is her ad. They think it's my own ad. People don't see it, and they're coming. She's helping my name ID, and that's the only thing that I have going against me, is that people don't know me. And it's because of you being here today, you'll be able to take that message to the streets and to the communities and all of your families, and we will cause this great victory to happen. So 3 reasons to vote for Salvi: the economy, crime, and parents who deserve to be in the driver's seat of our kids' education. And I'm so thankful to be here today. Thank you so much for having me and for all of you. And God bless America. Let's go win this in 2 weeks. Amen.
Again, folks, just do your best, get out there and try to encourage folks to vote. At the end of the day, money means nothing if nobody walks into the voting booths and votes. Okay, you have to physically move into the voting booths and vote. So please vote for Kathy. God bless you, and you're in our prayers. We're going to go ahead and skip forward, and we're going to call Dan Brady for Secretary of State at this time.
First off, I'm Dan Brady, and I'm the Republican nominee for Secretary of State.
That was actually wonderful, Lieutenant Colonel, for having that event, because it is so important not only to hear about the candidates, but to see them front and center, and to be able to ask them questions, really, and to get a feel for them. You know, are they personable? Are they approachable? Because that's really important. I mean, if they're going to govern me, I'd like to be able to have a cup of coffee with them, drink some chai, you know, eat some cake or something like that so that I can feel them out. So that was wonderful. It looks like it was a very successful event.
Well, like is always successful. I mean, we were celebrating our 15 years of existence of the Syrian GOP. So in those 15 years, we have expanded a lot and given an opportunity for these individuals to come and look. One of these individuals, if not all, may be your future leaders who are going to make the determination and make a decision on what the life of Assyrians today and in the future is going to be like, the ones living in those districts. So if you do not get engaged and you do not get involved, then basically you're taking your own self determination and tossing it to the winds. And it's not much asking you to literally walk in and vote, at a voting site. And uh, if that's all you could do, that's all we need. And look, as I said in those comments, you could have millions of dollars poured into campaigns, but if people do not go out and vote, it makes no difference. And
Mhm.
on the Democratic side of the House, if you look at the numbers historically over a long period of time, they don't do well as far as getting the vote out in the midterms, even though they have some of the best machine capabilities. The lady Kathy Salvi that you looked at,
Mhm.
when they sent out the initial ballots here, they didn't even put her name on the mail-in ballots for an entire county. So those votes are not going to go to her. She had one house where 43 individuals have voted from one address against her. And she has brought that up. We had an individual, Frank DeFranco, last time who ran in 2020 elections. He caught the Democratic machine here in Illinois red handed as far as what they were doing, as far as cheating the system. He was initially declared the victor in the election, to include the press here in Illinois had declared him a victor. And then a few days later, they flipped it and said that his opponent is the one who's going to claim the seat. He went through a legal fight against the machine. They didn't even allow him discovery because of a lot of the judges here in Illinois are still been appointed, some of which have been appointed, not all, to their positions that blocked the ability of him to challenge a party that they belong to.
Right.
Even though, with that said, he's still in the process after 2 years fighting in the appellate courts. He is bleeding out $70,000 a month trying to do this. And when you sit and talk
Wow.
to a guy like Frank DeFranco and you talk to Kathy Salvi, and people say, well, why are you doing it if at the end of the day you're going to lose out money and you're going to lose out the possibility of being able to even have a victory if they're going to cheat the system? Because Tammy Duckworth here in Illinois had to take money that she was going to send other places, to include in those swing states, and now has to expand it here to endure in order to be able to survive herself. So you may not be the victor at the end of the day, but you have to get involved in the process. If I may, on just my running, when I ran here in Illinois, real quick. I'll be honest with you. Before I ran, if you sat in meetings, coffee shops, anywhere, Assyrians would only, you would hear them talk about European soccer games or European championships. No, Assyrians weren't talking about politics. When I ran my first time and we started putting pressure in the system, I started hearing Assyrians suddenly start talking about, oh, we have an individual who's an Assyrian who's running. They start
Mhm.
talking about elections. They start understanding how Congress works. What position is he running for? How can he help? The second time that I ran, they started not just talking politics internally to their own community, but they started talking politics with other communities. They started talking to the Greeks, to the Indians, to the Armenians, to the Jewish community. We had events together where the Syrian and the Israelis Israeli flag sat together on stage and spoke about issues that affect them. Just this past Monday, I brought the mayor of Skokie on my show, New Paradigms with Sargon Sangiri, to talk to him about the issues affecting Skokie. He's a card carrying Democrat. His family, his wife, has lived here since the 70s in Skokie. He's the mayor of Skokie currently. His children are educated in the public schools. My kids are educated in the Skokie public schools here. My son is going to a college here where the mayor had initially taught a few years ago as a adjunct professor. So, regardless of your political party affiliation, I still brought him in because it was important for us to talk about some of the issues and topics that are going to be affecting us, just like his family and my family. So, just in the process of a dialogue, it has allowed us, after my last run, to where I had Assyrians, young men and women, came to my house, some running as Democrats, and sat down and asked for counsel. I gave them my counsel as what I taught. Since then, I saw more Assyrians getting involved and running at the local levels, and at some even having goals and wants and desires, aspirations to run at the federal level, which is good. But it took one individual stepping in, going against a individual who was the minority whip in a Democratic held Cook County, where people said it's suicide to run against her, to open the door and the ability for others to get engaged, change the dialogue of what we talked about. So we don't talk about European Championship games, waste 365 days talking about teams and players that will never reach into their pocket, give $1 to those certain Christians that are
No.
suffering in northern Iraq. But we start talking about politics and what we need to do to finally not just be productive members of the society here in America, but at the same time start building the structures that we need and the political capabilities in order to be able to, mobilize those Syrians to be able to control their future in the long run. I'm sorry it was a little bit long winded, but I wanted to make sure I gave that example to you as to how one step forward getting in the arena changes things.
Absolutely. And because politics in the Assyrian community is taboo, and the reason why it's taboo, and I'm going to go to you, Donald, on this question, because it's been taboo, because of and I often said, the biggest criminal that perpetrated the greatest crime against the humanity and against the Assyrian Christians of the Middle East, regardless of where they came from in the Middle East, Iran, Iraq, it was the government. The government perpetrated those crimes. And as a result, there is a fear from politics. There's a fear of knowing where the government knows where I live. The government is going to know how I voted, and of course, the punishment that might come thereafter. And so it has become taboo. And we want to thank you, Lieutenant Colonel Sangiari, for putting yourself out there and becoming a great example of people being able to put themselves out there. You might not have won, but you paved a very, very important road for those that will come behind you and be able to walk that paved road. So, having both of you on the program coming, and both of you are sitting in liberal states. Donald, you're in California, and of course, Lieutenant Colonel Singati, you are in Illinois, and you can't get further from the liberal states. And I often say that I have escaped liberalism or socialism 3 times. Once in Iraq, second from Chirac, and then, of course, going to California and then coming to Arizona. Not to say that California is that much better right now, as we see, because it is slowly but surely going towards that purple number or that purple color. And of course, we are working and doing everything we can to be able to get out the vote and to inform people of what's at stake. Donald, let me try with you. Let me start with you. You're in California. Do you see the tide turning as far as the Assyrian Americans? Because I know that during the time when we were campaigning for the Assyrians for Trump campaign, the Assyrians for Trump, we were attacked. I don't want to say attacked, but there was resistance from the California Assyrians that said, you don't represent us. And when we know, and Lieutenant Sangiari and I have often spoken about the fact that we know that Assyrians as a whole are conservatives. We come from conservative values, being Christian. Our values, our core values, identify more with the Republican Party. Do you see a turning tide in California?
I would say as a whole, the state may be turning slightly toward the red. And I think part of it is just the fact that the proof is in the pudding. We have businesses leaving the state. We have individuals leaving the state. Talent is leaving major corporations. I think when people look at that, when they see, your Elon Musks and so on and so forth relocating to other states that are more business friendly, it really gets them to look at things a little differently, especially if it starts affecting jobs, which we're already in a recession by definition nationally, and people are struggling to find jobs, or at least well-paying ones, to keep up with the inflation caused by incredible government spending. As far as the Assyrian community goes, I am a little bit less optimistic, and I say that for this reason. I ran for Turlock City Council back in 2014. At that time, we had run the numbers here locally, and in a city of about 71,000 at that time, we had a total of 2,000 and some change Assyrian individuals who were registered to vote. And in a city like Turlock, you do the numbers based off of previous elections back then in 2014. You'll notice that it takes about 4, 5, 6, 7,000 votes to make it to get a candidate in there. And it's a little bit more than that if we're talking about a mayoral position, because now Turlock is doing districting because Measure A passed that year in 2014. I actually was okay with that measure because I believe in smaller units of government, but I think it was pitched with the intent of trying to get it was pitched in a divisive way, and that was that there isn't enough minority representation, which I think was nonsense given the demographics of the city. We pretty much had almost a uniformity in our demographics in terms of who was serving on the council, and later on who ended up serving later on. We've had individuals from pretty much all different ethnicities that have major proportion in the city. Now, I'm not optimistic because given all of the drama that has unfolded since 2014, both locally and nationally, I'm not seeing greater engagement. And in 2014, and years prior, I was actually a proponent of an effort for us to try to get more individuals registered countywide. Now, at that time, we had about 500,000 individuals in the county, and we only needed to get about maybe 22,000 Assyrians registered in the county, countywide. And, we have Assyrians in the city of Turlock, Ceres, Houston, Modesto, Salida, all of the different cities in the county. And of those, we've estimated that there's a total of about 35,000. Of course, not all 35,000 can vote, but we assume that if we had very high turnout in terms of registration, we could have reached that threshold in order to achieve what's called minority status. Now, normally I'm not into partisan politics. I'm also not into racial politics. I don't care, because I think we're all Americans and we need to be good stewards of our country. That said, the funding was already allocated. So when I was a proponent of us trying to get minority status, if the money's there, go ahead and get it, And the only way to have done that is if we had more individuals registered to vote. since 2014 until now, we have hardly had an increase in registered Assyrians to vote. So that's 8 years later. We've had one Assyrian has been elected since then. We've had a half Assyrian that's been elected in Turlock. We've had individuals running for mayor in Turlock who are Assyrian. And previously, we've had an Assyrian mayor in Turlock for many, many years. We have not seen an uptick in the amount of registered Assyrians. So there's no engagement there. And if there's no engagement, then you're leaving dollars on the table, which, by the way, it's going to be nearly impossible to achieve that status now, given the fact that the county, the total population has increased substantially since 2014, and our population has actually decreased because we have Assyrians who are getting married, moving out. Maybe they're going to the Bay Area for work. Maybe they're going to LA. Maybe they're leaving the state. And that has happened. So what was once possible in 2014 is no longer possible now. We've left dollars on the table. We've left certain perks on the table that other ethnicities are enjoying. So even though I'm not a advocate of this kind of type of politics, I was willing very much to promote it because the money's already allocated. And if one group's taking advantage of it, we should have taken advantage of it. So I'm actually not very hopeful for the Assyrians here, unfortunately, in terms of their political engagement. I hope that by me saying this, it angers them enough to make a difference. And you may not like what I'm saying, but that's fine. I hope it encourages you to go out and make a difference. I hope it encourages you to listen and go and take advantage of the precinct strategy, committee strategy. And I also hope that it encourages you to go ahead and run for office if you have the capability, if you're a knowledgeable person. Now, in 2014, I did not win the city council position, but I guarantee you I was knowledgeable about every single subject pertaining to our city locally and how Turlock actually has an influence on the greater region and also how local politics affects things globally. You can actually go in and search on any search engine an article that I had authored in which I actually quoted Colonel Sangari called Acting Locally, Thinking Globally. And that's something that I believe wholeheartedly in. So you can go ahead and search that. I've also spoken extensively on local taxes, how they're affecting us, roads, so on and so forth. You'll probably find those on any search engine if you just search my name in Turlock. Now, going forward, there needs to be some kind of tipping point here in California, and I think it will happen. Whether Assyrians have a role in that, I hope they do, but the state has grown so top-heavy and also so far to the left that even reasonable Democrats are finding reason to leave it. So I hope that reason prevails, and I hope that it turns around, because the way things are going, pretty much the majority stakeholder here is going to be the Chinese Communist Party at this point. And I've actually spoken on Colonel Sangari's show about that, how they are actually buying up tremendous amounts of land here in the United States and specifically in California.
Absolutely, and I agree completely with that. And for the allocation of the funding, it's not really about funding. I know exactly what you mean. By utilizing the funds that are set aside and allocated for the minorities, it would have exemplified that the Assyrian community is engaged, is active, is utilizing the funding for their public service. It's there for the public service. And the fact that we have not utilized it is, in fact, not a very good example of us being engaged politically or otherwise. So I completely understand. And you know what? You, as well as Lieutenant Colonel Sangari, even though you have not won the positions that you are running for, but you as well have paved the way so that others can walk through that road and be able to reach their destination. So
If
I can.
If I may just interrupt real quick, Um, look, I ran in a nonpartisan position, but it's very clear if you read my policies, I definitely lean a little bit more toward the right. But if anyone is interested in running for any of these positions, if you just want information on it, I'm willing to help you regardless of where you stand. Like I said, it's not foreign to me to be able to work with people across the aisle. I'm not, let's say, a zealot. What I am a zealot for is the well-being of my country and my people.
Absolutely.
So yeah, if this is something that you want to do, if your personal life is in a state where your family's well fed, if there's no strife in your household and in your family, then I think at that point you have proven yourself to serve as a steward at a local level and so on and so forth in spheres extending further out. So if you would like to get involved at the local level, whether it's nonpartisan or partisan, and regardless of what party it is, I don't care. I will show you where to find the information and I'll leave you to it.
And
And
you're on
I encourage
Facebook, and for
individuals to get
those,
involved.
yeah, and if you want to find Donald, he's on Facebook. It was very easy to find him. I actually friended him earlier today, and so if you're interested in getting in touch with him, message him, or he's on social media. So thank you
Yeah,
for
and,
that,
and
and
sorry, I'll
bless your
say one
heart.
more thing. I know I'm cutting you off, Colonel
It's okay.
Gary. I'm gonna have the Colonel's wrath on me here in a second. Look, you were showing a photo. I think that photo was from September or October of 2014, the same year that I actually ran for Turlock City Council. What you may not know about that photo is that I was actually there to take possession of a proclamation that was written by me, authored by me, and agreed upon by all of the local Assyrian organizations. All of them, I had visited all of them prior to that. I had provided them with copies of it, and I had the wording in such a way so as to recognize the genocides, not just one genocide, but the genocides that have affected and dispersed the Assyrian people across the world. And that was recognized on a local level. And what I was trying to do at that point was basically to get it done. I also got it done in Modesto as well. And the goal was to try to get it done in all local levels of government. Now, I've actually spoken about this before. Just because it's a proclamation doesn't mean it has really any weight to it. But it's the admission that this thing occurred in the past that's important. And once it happens on a local level, then it allows us to move that up to state and federal. And instead of getting a non-binding House resolution like we've seen in the past, we actually get something with teeth on it that's a binding resolution that can allow the Assyrian people to get the kind of support they need that we're freely giving to Ukraine right now, for example, which is
Yes.
fine. We want to protect our allies, but there's another ally right now that needs the help of America and specifically needs the help of the Assyrians that are in America. And that is the Assyrian people who are in northern Iraq. And if we were able to get that binding resolution instead of a non-binding one that has no weight behind it, it's basically a paper tiger. If we were able to get that, it could have had many possibilities for us to get funding in order to have our own force structures on the ground there, like the ones that Colonel Singeri was advising there. And so that's what I wanted to add on that. Sergis, I'm sorry for cutting you off. Please go ahead.
No, but that is a great point. Thank you so much. That is a great accomplishment, and thank you for mentioning that. Go ahead, Lieutenant Colonel.
No, look, I think what Donald's talking about and is very important. Australians have to understand that precedents are set, and when we don't take these steps. Look, I have a show called New Paradigms with Sargis Singeri. The only reason that show manifested itself was because I ran in 2020 during a pandemic. We couldn't even knock on people's doors. Everything got shut down to the heights of the COVID itself. So guess what? They say necessity is the mother of all inventions. I had no choice but to create something to get out there to try to at least talk to the constituents in the 9th congressional district. And what was that? New Paradigms. I created a show because of it. That show would have not been created if we had a COVID, if we had lockdowns. I would have done the traditional way of knocking on doors and trying to get the vote out. I completely changed the traditional way of doing it. I created a show where I had my 121st, show just this past Monday, and some of the guests and individuals that I brought over to talk foreign policy and advisory issues are huge. Even today, just the precedents that the show has set. I have an email that Right American Media now has decided to pick up my shows to include the previous ones I've done. So the precedence is set. If you want to take this and look at applying it to overseas, and I'll ask you this question, Mona. The president of Iraq, what cultural group does the president of Iraq usually come from?
The Arab or the Turks? I mean, I'm
It,
sorry, Kurds. Arabs
Kurds.
mostly, but it's, yeah,
No,
Kurds.
the prime minister comes from Arabs, but the
President is a
president
Kurd.
is a Kurd. Now,
Yeah,
is that in their constitution?
no.
No, it's not. You know how it happened? When Assyrians initially were asked, okay, there's a new government going to be established. What's your
Hmm.
recommendation? Even the Assyrians who were in political positions, some of whom in Chicago had served at the state level in the state senate, uh, their thought and process was, well, it has to be some Assyrian guy from Iraq that should be nominated for a position to represent us. Well,
Hmm.
when they made that assumption, every other ethnical group chose somebody who was either a British and American citizen to be that individual. So
Mm.
they did not think logically that, you know what, why don't we put somebody who's an American guy, since America has now invaded Iraq and America is the one who is going to be establishing the new government. Maybe you should take a person who's an American citizen, possibly offer that position. And when President Sistani, when Sistani, Ayatollah Sistani, had said in his comments directly out of his mouth that uh, for the presidency, it would be much more preferred by Iraqis for it to be a Christian Assyrian.
Mm.
Uh, Guess what? Assyrians didn't think about putting somebody in there. So who recommended a name? The Kurds did. And now everybody
Wow.
in the world always thinks who's the person who's going to be the president of Iraq has to be a Kurd, not because it's in the Constitution, because it just set a precedence. So when you are doing things in the overseas or you're doing things here in the United States, when it comes to being involved in elections, being involved in voting, and being
Hmm.
involved in recommending individuals to take certain steps, i- they set a precedence. Why is the incumbency so important in the United States? You could be in the incumbency position for 3 months in a special election, coming up into a general election. You have the power of incumbency behind you. So that means the person who's running against you has to fight an uphill battle. Same
Hmm.
thing, if we understand it as a certain people, that every step you take sets a precedence. And that
Exactly.
precedence is what allows us to be able to sustain over the millennia. Today, the Assyrian of today is still here because of the precedence that was set 6,000 plus years ago by our ancestors. We're still living off the precedents they established. And the
Yeah.
entire globe knows us as the indigenous people of the region because thousands of years ago, an Assyrian stood up in the middle of what is called today Assyrian River Plain or Iraq or whatever you want to call it, and said, I want to have my own self determination and I'm going to fight and have it even though I am a vassal under the Hittites, I'm a vassal under the Egyptians, and I am going to plan to strengthen myself in the long run to where we become an empire. Today's Assyrians still is able to walk, and when people look at him and say you're Assyrian, that entire history is with them. Why? Because they decided to set a precedence. Set those precedents here in the United States. Set the precedence of having an Assyrian, whether it be in the Republican or the Democratic side of the House, to be a state senator, a state legislator, a
Mm-hmm.
federal in Congress, a senator, or in the House of Representatives, and build those caucuses not by having others who are not from your community build some kind of an Assyrian caucus. Assyrian caucus has existed in the United States. When I sat and I was briefing about the genocide in 2014, I had individuals in Congress who asked me, "Why don't you guys set up an Assyrian caucus?" And I laughed and I said, "There's one. It doesn't do anything." And today, we're gonna have Assyrian caucuses at the in Congress who are not gonna really do anything, because the voting bloc itself doesn't understand that it needs to set those precedents to put those leverage and the power and the pressure to allow Assyrians to be at the table. It will come to a point where, if you understand that, the same thing the Kurds now do is always automatically the discussions are we have to have a Kurd as a president. It's not in the Constitution, but one day it may become in the Constitution. If we have taken those steps that they did, but you're nothing more than recommending a name, we probably would have been setting the precedent in Iraq. And to this day, people would always have said, well, the president of Iraq has to be an Assyrian. That's it.
Has to be an
So,
Assyrian.
look,
We missed it.
we miss it because we don't think in like our ancestors. Our ancestors taught long term. We don't think long term, and we don't think precedence capability. We think that if it isn't us, the entire thing's going to fall apart. Assyrians have existed. The fall, the birth and the death of all our kings, the fall of Assyrian Empire in 612 BC, the death of number of our patriarchs from the church, and it will outlast us. All three of us sitting here talking today,
Yeah. Yeah.
long after we have become fairy dust, as I call it.
Mhm.
It's just that you set those precedents. I have created the Near East Center for Strategic Engagement. I've created United Assyrian Appeal, and those can be long enduring institutions that can recruit, work with, and expand Assyrian narratives and the Assyrians' wants and desires as they become advisory capacities for nations that we have to sit and talk with and become an ambassador for our people. And I encourage others out there to do the same. Create those institutions that are going to be long reaching after you have passed. Hopefully, even the new paradigm show will long last after I'm no longer a host, and allow it to still become something that will educate the American public on foreign policy issues, talking to experts at a level that other programming out there doesn't have. So that's the importance of why you need to go in and vote. That's the importance of why you need to participate, to set those precedents for the future generations.
Absolutely. And if we
Cynicism's
can have,
not going to work.
I'm sorry.
Cynicism will not work.
Yeah. Very
If
true.
our ancestors had held that mentality, we would not be sitting here today. And what I
Yeah.
mean by that is, while the Assyrian Empire did fall in 606 BC, we have tremendous evidence of continuity of the Assyrian people. You're welcome to go online and you can search the name Mark Georgis, as well as others, and you'll see plenty of evidence attesting to how they have held advisory positions and military commander positions within various empires since, including the Sassanid Persians, the Abbasid Caliphate, during the years of the Mongols. They were still assisting. They had doctors within the Abbasid Caliphate in the years right before the Mongols sacked it, following on into the Ottoman era, and even recently. And some of us may not be proud of this, and probably I shouldn't bring it up, but don't forget that even the former prime minister of Iraq under Saddam Hussein was actually an ethnic Assyrian, even if he called himself otherwise. So there's a certain element of pragmatism that we have had over the years, and we should not take a winner takes all or nothing type of approach to things. If we can just get a small foothold in any capacity, we can make a tremendous amount of change. And just for example, Sargis running has made a tremendous amount of difference. And other individuals, if you follow that and take on the mantle, you'll see the same thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Fred, if we can put up those the websites for both the GOP in Illinois and, of course, in Arizona, so that people can actually look at those QRs and just point your telephone camera onto that. That Assyrian GOP is Illinois, and then we've got another one coming up in Arizona. I don't have one for California, but however, that'll help you kind of negate you through who's running. And what candidate, and of course, always do your own research. Always be ready to know the issues. And of course, speaking of issues, some of the issues that, of course, are not going to be on the ballot, but the candidates that are running are going to be representing one side or the other of this issue. For example, here in Arizona, one of the biggest thing, and I think across the country, is election integrity. The one that is very huge for us as a immigrant community, Assyrian Americans, border security. The other one, of course, you mentioned city council, Donald, and of course, many of us are worried. I mean, I've got grown kids. I'm not sure what ages are your children. I know, Lieutenant Colonel, you said one of your children is going to college, but CRT, critical race theory, that is in our school system right now. Parents losing control of what is taught and what is not taught to their children, losing control of the educational system. And many of of course, the elephant in the room, of course, being the economy and the inflation that is being denied. And we know that we are in an inflation, gas and energy dependency. And of course, again, there's so many elephants in the room. The vaccine mandate. I don't know if any of you, I shared it
You
on
mean
the
donkeys
Facebook
in the
page.
room?
Yeah, there you go.
If it was elephants in a room, I mean, we'd have a totally different country.
Exactly. But
You know,
there's an article.
Mona,
Go ahead.
Mona, I
Go
apologize,
ahead.
but one of the other pieces, I'll give you an example. You know, we had a Syrian run here for a trustee in Skokie, where I live. Well,
Yes.
you know, the Democratic machine that you know, he and others have supported for a long time turned and basically stabbed him in the back,
Wow.
and he lost the election. The individual who was put in his place, who really came in and took that seat that he could have been holding, went out and collected referendums, 3 of them that are on the Skokie ballot for this election. That means if you're in Skokie and you're going through voting for everybody, you know, from the governors to the senators, all the way down past the judges, there's 3 referendums that are there. Now, the way the referendums are written are, wow, you know, we want to have change. We're going to have, you know, more individuals getting involved in the elections. But what they do is they are requiring to basically take Skokie, which is currently 60,000 people, and break it into 6 different wards. That means in Chicago, Cook County, each ward has 60,000 people in it. Now you're going to create 6 different wards inside of a 60,000 person village, which is going to take the current government and what has been able to at least establish and achieve over the years, with the property taxes being low for the residents of Skokie, which are majority Assyrian, and the business ability to function, and even possibly take your residential areas and now bring low income housing into those residential areas, which means your property taxes can be skewed, and probably crime, especially with the Safety Act being implemented in Illinois after 1 January. completely tripling in the Skokie area. And why is that? Is because one Assyrian who ran got stabbed in the back by the Democratic machine here, the same individuals he has stood with and helped over the years, and an individual was put in place of him who went out and got enough signatures, probably from some Assyrians who probably didn't know what they were signing on when they signed those petitions because they didn't bother to read it, and now might be an ability for him and his folks that are out of Evanston, which was a far left organizational structures, to break the Skokie government with getting nothing more than 50 plus one votes. So if you're an Assyrian today and you're living in Skokie and you have supposedly built your entire family and businesses here, and you don't go out and vote the next in this November 8th, and you don't go or vote no on those ballot positions, and the other side votes yes 50% plus one, guess what? Your governmental structure in Skokie is completely gone. You're going to have to find a means and ways to possibly in the future
Wow.
to pick up and move to another possible location. So what Assyrians could have done here in Skokie with the numbers we had, you could have probably had a mayor, you could have had every trustee position held. Come this election, depending on what you decide to do, may completely change. And now you have to pack up, not just maybe move out of the state, out of Skokie, you may have to move up and move completely to areas that you had never planned on moving. So it's very important
Wow.
for us to understand when you're not engaged in the fight and you're not out there supporting your fellow Assyrians in elections, and you're not out there showing through your vote capability that we will not allow what a party did to one of our own by stabbing him in the back after all the effort and work he did to support them, and they didn't stay with him when he was running. What we are saying is basically that we're willing to run away from anything politically here, and that's not the certain way of doing it. And we are putting ourselves and our kids using our own hands in a position where tomorrow, even the home we live in has been compromised because we decided not to vote.
Let me ask both of you a question that is, very close to my heart. Again, being a legal immigrant myself, and of course, both of you. Donald, you are an immigrant as well, right? As I understand it.
That's correct. Yeah,
Uh,
I came to the United States when I was like just a few months old.
Okay. Now, I know we were talking about reaching across the aisle, being partisan, bipartisan, of course, and of course that is the American way to be able to agree to disagree and to be able to get up from the table, from the political table, and still come together, go out and have a drink, have dinner, But that seems to have been lost. This civil discourse has been lost. How do we get this divided? Um, are we not all Americans? And why are we not all on the same page? And let me ask you this question, for the sake of, again, being a subject that we can relate to, immigration. We all immigrated to this country legally, and we were vetted. We waited somewhere, and then we came into this country. You've got immigration. You've got open border. You've got human trafficking. You have cartel exploiting the situation to their benefits. Drugs, fentanyl coming in through to destroy Americans. I mean, there was enough fentanyl coming in through our border. I'm a border state. There's enough fentanyl coming through our borders to kill the entire population of America. We're either in denial, or are we really our own country haters? Are we hating our country? Are we in denial? Or is politics taking over our lives so much so that we are just basically going to stand divided? After all, we are all Americans. How did we get so divided? I mean, it's out there for those people that I haven't been to the border. I'd love to go to the border and visit the border, but it's pretty obvious. A nation cannot have open borders. We know that more than anyone else in this world as legal immigrants. Donald, let's start with you. What do you think about that?
Well, I typically take a systems approach to these kind of matters. So I don't look at it from a linear perspective where it's one thing leading to another, although some of that does occur. But I look at it from a systems perspective in that if you were to look at, the spokes on a wheel and, where they crisscross and go in all sorts of directions and um, a lot of things intertwine and affect each other. So I think one of the biggest factors, however, is the media. Um, I think we really need to kind of unplug from them. Um, Anything that causes division, in my opinion, is something that I don't want to watch. Now, the only reason I occasionally will tune in is for link analysis, just to kind of figure out where things are headed globally, and also because it helps me uh, recognize patterns. And patterns are what are needed in order for you to understand when information operation is occurring. What the United States has been a victim of for the last 2 decades, perhaps even longer, really, is an information operation campaign. And the you can't just say that it's only one uh, entity that has launched it, but it's kind of obvious where it's coming from. And what it has done is sowed division here in the United States. And it's not just the United States, it's sowing division between the United States and its allies as well. For example, we have the CCP, which has tried to drive a wedge between Japan and South Korea and the United States, and Japan and the United States. And if you go to the Near East website, you can see Sargis talk about that a lot, especially on his podcast. So we are victims of that. And the media information operations are really one of the major players in that. Other factors include education, the financial system. You can weaponize all of those. But I won't really get into that for the purpose of this show. And I think Sargis can add to all of that a little bit more as well.
Go ahead, Lieutenant Colonel.
Look, the Chinese Communist Party had two plans, a 50-year plan and a 100-year plan. And they're well ahead of their 50-year plan and well ahead of their 100-year plan. And that plan had to do with the United States declining and the Chinese Communist Party, not China, expanding its ability and reach to include within the institutions of the United States. Now, add to that the Cold War, and add to that the communist ideology and its effects internally in the United States and what they were trying to do going back to even earlier in the 60s. And guess what you have? This is what you see today is the fruits of the labor of what they planted as far as seeds were concerned in the United States going back decades ago. Today, you're just seeing this, the harvest come to fruition. So that's just a reality of it. And people may say, no, how's that even a possibility? The enemy has a brain, and the enemy has a want and a desire. And if the enemy wants to be on top, you have to be on the bottom. And it will use you to get to you, and it will use your kids, their ability to target you, whether it be giving fentanyl through the borders. We got Halloween coming up, killing as many kids as they can here. Yeah, using TikTok to steal your metadata, to put agents to sleep with your congressman in California, or have access using drugs and prostitutes and secretaries to the POTUS's son to be able to have influences on your governmental structure, and then they'll do it. And at the end of the day, it's very simple. Pride is a hell of a thing, and these individuals who don't like to admit that they're wrong or are not able to separate their pride from the reality of what needs to be done to help the nation, put themselves in the position where they are today. When you have an enemy that has you by your money, you're in trouble. We're going to a midterm election that can change the course of American history, in a time where we are in a global war. You want to call it World War III, you can, but it's a global war where we're fighting this enemy in Africa, we're fighting this enemy in the Middle East, we're fighting this enemy on the battlefields of Ukraine. We might be fighting this enemy on the battlefields of Taiwan. And, information operations are stage setters for these type of wars. And as we're internally fighting each other, guess what? The enemy is able to finally see the fruits of its labor from the execution of its 50 to 100-year plan. We live in a country that every 2 years Congress changes. If this Congress becomes a Republican Congress in both the House and the Senate, if the leadership and those 23 West execs who have made their living on trying to bring to manifest what Wang Yi provided when he spoke on stage in Washington, D.C., going back to 2014 at the Brookings Institute, and what Susan Rice at that time tried to actualize, and when she gave her talk at George Washington University. And guess what? Even in election loss, if it's a red wave, will not change their minds. And if it doesn't change their minds, guess what? The enemy will still continue to execute its 50 to 100-year plan. And 2 years from now, if the Republicans are gone and Democrats come back and take the House and the Senate, and maybe the Republicans take the presidency, it will not change the path where we are on, which means that the enemies in a global war are expanding. Unfortunately for us, it may take a global war. The reality of it is smacking us in the face for us to finally stop fighting each other internally and
Hmm.
realize that we need to get rid of corruption, clean it out, and start focusing on the reality, which is survival, basically. And when you're you have option of surviving or worrying about things that have nothing to do with survival of you and your family, then I think you'll make the right decisions in the long run.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we shouldn't have been here. We should have been better stewards of the global democracies out there. We chose to be lazy in the process of it.
While leading being looked at as the leadership of the world that comes to bring peace and harmony. Today, we are fighting amongst ourselves, not realizing that the enemy has infiltrated our peace and our way of life. And we, in fact, fighting each other, have taken our attention away from what's going on globally, which is a takeover. A global war, as you are describing, which is really scary to a point where here we are facing a midterm election, and yet the world is on fire, really, and America is nowhere to be found on the world stage in the sense of uh, leading the way to a better life. And to tell you the truth, I mean, this has been such an informative program. I want to thank both of you for being here. We can sit here and talk. I had notes on speaking on a lot more subjects, but you know what? You guys have fully expanded on so much that needed to be spoken of, really. And I want to thank you for your contribution to everything that you do, everything you touch. It just expands and it widens and it educates. So I want to thank you both. Having you both on the program really, truly is a blessing. And I am honored to know you, Donald, for the first time. And I hope you come back to the program. And if you'd like to say a few last words, we'll go ahead and end the program with your words.
Okay. Well, thank you, and likewise, we greatly appreciate you and the service that you're putting in by having the show now for 7 years. Um, so I really want to drive forward the point that we need to get involved. I mentioned earlier the 4 different type of boxes: um, the jury box, the ballot box, the soap box, and the cartridge box, meaning um, ammunition and ultimately war. And we really want to avoid the last one. And unfortunately, right now in our country, in the United States, we're on the brink of the global war going kinetic. There is a war. It's already happening right now. It's economic and it's also information warfare, but it can go kinetic at any point instead of just through proxies, which NECSE has also mentioned in the past via the Backyard Wars series of articles. But while all of that is going on, we're also on the brink of possibly a civil war. So I think we need to look at the big picture, that the landscape can change in the blink of an eye. I don't like being an alarmist. I don't like being a fearmonger. But for anybody who's looked at countries that have fallen apart, and we as Syrians are very, very familiar with this. When the revolution happened in Iran, for example, when the Iraq invasion occurred, and before that, when Saddam came to power, and before that, when Somalia occurred, and before that, when the genocides occurred, and it wasn't just one, it was many. Same thing in Syria, the Syrian war. So we're quite familiar with that. But unfortunately, modern Assyrians who have been living in the comfort of the West for the majority of their lives, if they were born here or if they came early, they may not be familiar with that. And they may not know that your entire world can flip upside down. You can basically go to having a lack of any kind of water in just a matter of moments. And I guarantee that if there's a civil war, we're going to be looking at infrastructure being taken out, similar to other civil wars and the previous U.S. civil war. We're going to have foreign countries with their operators who are currently already here due to the porous border, who are going to be using those operators to, who are already using them to train elements here within the United States, these sleeper cells, to attack the grid, God forbid, if there were to be a civil war to occur. So you can see the entire state of the nation change in just a matter of moments. And you could be in a position where you wake up without water, without electricity, and really without any sort of security. So we really need to try to avoid any sort of internal strife. We need to be cognizant of the bigger picture, which is that there's a global war that's already occurring, and it may go kinetic at any point. And it might, I hate to say it, but it might even be the only solution to what's going on. So if we're able to do that and keep our eyes on the prize and avoid attacking each other, then we can basically avoid what Assyrians have gone through. We're kind of the proverbial canary in a coal mine. If there's a genocide occurring, if somebody's attacking the Assyrians because they're Christian, well, guess what? We were the first in the line of that, and now it's happening elsewhere. And Christians are even being attacked here in the United States. Who would have thought that'd be possible? So,
and this is why
we're
I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
I think we need to be cognizant of that. No, not at all. Go ahead.
I was going to say we're not alarmist, but we are actually raising our voice to alarm the nations to know what's coming, because we've seen those dangers, we've experienced them, we've survived them, and this is why we are actually warning. It's a warning call, really.
Mm-hmm. I'll just leave it kind of with a little bit of humor. We've seen during California blackouts, our famous rolling blackouts, because of the lack of energy to keep homes running, their air conditions running during our blazing hot summers. We've seen people lose their minds because of how hot it can get. Now imagine something that lasts a mere few days here in California. Imagine that were to occur nationwide for months, for years. So we really want to avoid that. Don't look at social media and all these people saying, "Oh, well, I'm looking forward to the war and I'm going to take out so and so." You're not. Civil wars do not play out like that. They're tragic. And right now, besides that, we have other factors that are at play. There's still supply chain issues that were caused by the coronavirus pandemic. We have war obviously happening and can go kinetic at any time. And all of these factors can compound and it just spirals out of control. So that's really why I want us to focus on this, because
Yeah.
the cynicism can lead to that. This lack of getting involved can lead to that, and we cannot afford that. And
We cannot. Yeah.
thank you again for having us. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Donald. Go ahead, Lieutenant Colonel.
I said, look, the only thing we're asking you to do is take this physical body of yours, walk it to a voting poll, and cast a ballot. That's it.
Yeah.
You know, we're giving you the simplest solution to it: vote. But from our perspective, we're asking you to vote to force the current leadership to make a change. That's it. And if you're not willing to do that, you're not going to do it, then you've signed your own fate in the long run. You've signed sealed the fate of this nation in the long run, especially given, as we say in the Near East Center for Strategic Engagement, possibility of a global war. I mean, my two parents lived through nuclear weapons being used on Japan and being tested for decades throughout the world. Today, we're talking about the possibility. We're not talking about it. The nation states are talking about the possibilities of a nuclear war. And if you don't understand the importance of you having to vote to change the direction of the dialogue that is taking place, and every now and then making a change to in a different direction, giving a different voice, maybe for a different agenda to over the next couple of years, then I don't know what to tell. I don't know what to tell you. You're not going to do anything. You have a right to
Yeah.
vote. Go and vote. You don't like any of the candidates, go and cast a vote without voting for any of the candidates. If you're in Skokie, one of your own Assyrians was stabbed in the back, and the person who replaced them has offered a referendum. And if you don't go vote no against it, or you want to go and vote yes because he belongs to your political party, all you're going to do is you're going to seal the fate of the future Assyrians living in Skokie, because you will dissolve the current government in Skokie for the benefit of one individual who replaced your Assyrian guy and went out and collected signatures on behest of the same people who stabbed the Assyrian in the back and have promoted and pushed them to try to push a current referendums on the agenda that will completely dissolve the ability of Assyrians in the future in Skokie of being able to have a unified capability and the demographic strength to possibly have a say in the current Skokie government in the future. So go out and vote.
That's bottom line. Your vote does matter. Donald said that in the beginning. Your vote does matter, and you matter. And for all of us that have come from oppressive governments, we fought and fought and fought, but we're not able to accomplish or to succeed in gaining our human rights to vote until we actually came to these Western countries that we are enjoying such privilege of being free, having all these liberties, and we raised our voices when we found our voices, and we raised our voices. It is only then that we were able to let the world know that there is a whole nation in Iraq, in Syria, in Lebanon, in Iran, suffering as a result of meeting the enemy head on and fighting until death. So, if not for yourself, then for those that we have left behind, for those that are still fighting, still running, still living in refugee camps, still struggling to gain their human rights. Do it for them. Do it for this country that adopted us, that took us in. And today, as you can see, a woman from the Middle East has a voice. And of course, my two brothers that are with me today are raising their voices, as far as Lieutenant Colonel Sangari having his own program. I'd encourage you to watch his program every Mondays. And once again, it is called the Ravi Sargas, your program is called the New Paradigm with Sargas Sargari. And he has phenomenal guests that he speaks about different subjects. And it's a wealth of knowledge. You will gain a lot. You will hear a new perspective. And of course, Donald, I'm meeting him for the first time. I am so impressive with your knowledge of the issues, knowledge of the Assyrian community, and of course your activism and your awareness about all that's happening. Now, everything we've spoken of today, of course, they're not predictions. They are just to make people aware so that you can out there and do your own research and become aware. The biggest weakness in the life of anyone is ignorance, is not knowing, is not having an education. And with the phone, you have a phone that has, we used to go, I'm from a generation where we used to go to the library. You no longer have to go to the library. Use your phone to be able to research. As we were, all the topics that we were talking about today, they're all on your internet. They're all on your Google search engine, and you can research any of that. Get involved. Be the difference. Be part of the solution. Go and vote, because your voice matters. Thank you so much for tuning in. Until the next time, we love you. Shlama. God bless you.
America Fest. So we are very honored to be here. We're going to be covering it. It's a summit that's going to take place for the next 4 days.
Thank you, America First!